Kwe Kwe, Udlaku Tanzi, hello, and bonjour. I'm pleased to be here today on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. And I also want to acknowledge the elders who started us off in the right way, in a good way, earlier this morning. The last 2 hours, I've had the opportunity to speak to and hear from many survivors and their descendants with respect to federally run Indian hospitals. For so many, this is the first time you've spoken about what happened. Some of you have carried these memories alone for decades, out of fear, out of pain, out of a sense that no one would believe you. Some of you were warned not to speak, that if you did, there would be consequences. And so you lived with it quietly while the rest of the country remained unaware. Today I'm here to say to you, we believe you. I believe you. As Minister of Crown-Indigenous Relations, I'm aware of how important it is that we face up to the past actions carried out by the federal government against Indigenous peoples of Canada. En tant que le ministre de la Couronne autochtone, je suis conscient de l'importance de faire face aux actions passées menées par le gouvernement fédéral à l'encontre des peuples autochtones du Canada. Many Canadians may be unaware of these shameful chapters of our past, but Indigenous people have been very much aware, either because they were survivors or because a close relative was affected, their brother, sister, mother, or father. And this pain endures. It endures to this day, and it transcends generations. Most Canadians have heard of residential schools. They've heard of the 60 Scoop, the current child welfare. But many do not know about the federally run Indian hospitals where Indigenous children and adults were often sent against their will. Between 1936 and 1981, the federal government operated 33 of these hospitals, originally established as tuberculosis treatment centers. However, they quickly became a tool of segregation. Many Indigenous patients were forced to stay for months or even years, as I heard this morning, enduring mistreatment, neglect, and abuse. For many, these hospitals were the site of some of the most painful and personal experiences of their life, memories that they rather forget, but they carry with them each and every day. It is through the incredible strength and fortitude of people like Ann Hardy and others in this room that the tragic experiences in these federal hospitals are beginning to enter the Canadian public consciousness. It is through their heartbreaking stories that we now know how so many Indigenous people faced abuse in these federal facilities. I wish we didn't have to be here today. I wish this chapter of our history had never happened. But it did. And so we have a responsibility not just to acknowledge it, but to act. I met Ann Hardy about 2 weeks ago in Toronto, and I was moved by her valor and courage in taking on this fight. She told us this morning that she often felt alone. She didn't have a chance. She told me 2 weeks ago that she didn't talk to many people about this. But as you know, heroes don't often think of themselves as heroes. But in Ann Hardy, we see a hero. Ann Cecile Hardy versus Attorney General of Canada lawsuit was filed in 2018 and certified as a class action in 2020. 3 similar lawsuits were later filed in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, but they've all been combined under what's now called the Hardy case. For the past 5 years, the Government of Canada has been working with the plaintiff's legal team to settle this case outside of court. In December 2024, we reached an agreement in principle, which was a big step toward resolving the lawsuit. From the start, our goal has been to settle these cases through negotiation rather than through long and difficult court battles, which often re-traumatizes survivors. We know that going to court can be painful to survivors, and we want to find a solution that focuses on healing, accountability, and meaningful support. Since reaching the agreement in principle, we've been working on a final settlement that provides fair compensation and long-term support for survivors and their communities. We have asked you to join us here today for an announcement that pending approval of the Federal Court of Canada, we've reached a final settlement in the Federal Indian Hospitals class action lawsuit. Nous vous avons demandé de vous joindre à nous aujourd'hui pour vous annoncer que dans l'attente de l'approbation de la Cour fédérale du Canada, nous sommes parvenus à un règlement final dans le cadre de recours collectif contre l'hôpital fédéral indien. Over the past 4 months, the Government of Canada and legal counsel for the plaintiffs have been negotiating outside the courts to resolve this class action in a fair, compassionate, and respectful manner. It is always our goal to resolve these matters through negotiation and reach a solution out of court, and I believe the parties have succeeded. I just want to bring to your attention the Cabinet Directive with respect to Indigenous litigation, and this is one of those approaches where we tried to bring conflicts outside of the formal legal system towards resolution, and that is often seen as far less colonial. At the same time, I have been meeting with groups of survivors and family members to hear their truths, acknowledge their pain, and ensure the settlement reflects their experiences. Their voices have shaped this moment. This settlement will not erase the pain. It will not bring back what was taken, but it does represent something that was long denied: responsibility. It provides individual compensation and investments to support healing, commemoration, and preservation of the history associated with these hospitals. A foundation will be created to support this work, guided by survivors. Somebody earlier this morning just reminded us that this is not about compensation. There isn't enough money in the world to compensate for a child to lose many years of their lives because they were in hospitals. They were tied down, or they were deeply impacted or wounded as a result of being there for 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 years, sometimes multiple times throughout their lifetime. This settlement includes an additional $150 million to extend existing federal health and wellness supports to class members through Indigenous Services Canada. Funding will also be provided for their ongoing legal fees during the claims process, as well as for administrative costs related to the implementation of the settlement agreement. We will ensure that claims are processed in a trauma-informed, culturally safe manner, and is created through active engagement with survivors. More information on this process and timelines, including compensation and class member supports, will be provided in advance of the approval hearing. It's set to take place in the spring of this year. Once approved by the federal court and following opt-out and appeal periods, compensation and other benefits will be made to eligible class members. As we move forward toward a court approval and implementation, we're committed to ensuring the survivors are at the center of the settlement process and actively engaged. We will work with you to develop a trauma-informed, culturally safe process to provide assistance to survivors during the claims process. This will include, but not limited to, survivor-centered in-person and community support to inform survivors and communities about the settlement. It will also provide assistance for survivors through the process and to ensure the provision of trauma-informed and culturally safe health supports are available. This proposed settlement is intended by the Government of Canada to help right a historic wrong and a major milestone in Canada's efforts to resolve historic claims of abuse. It is important to recognize that this work would not have been completed without so many, both in our department as well as lawyers from the Department of Justice, along with counsel for class counsel who have really worked so hard to get us to this point. For the survivors who have come forward to share your experience, I want to recognize your courage. It is not easy to speak about what happened. It is painful, but your voices have made this possible. They've forced your country to listen, to understand, and to begin making amends. I hope this brings at least some sense that the weight of this history does not belong to you alone. The burden is shared. Part of healing, true healing, is about making sure that those in power, those who shape the future, understand the harm of the past, that they know what was done and it can never happen again. This moment, I also want to recognize the leadership of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who tasked me and my predecessors, including Minister Miller and Bennett, to ensure that past harms endured by Indigenous people are addressed by this government. And since 2015, this is part of our collective journey towards reconciliation. And I want to acknowledge him today as he leaves office in the next few days. We would not be here without his leadership either. So I ask all Canadians to listen, to understand that these are not just stories alone, they're lived experiences. If you meet any one of the survivors that I met this morning, anywhere, at a mall, at a restaurant, on the train station, the airport, you would not understand that they're carrying what they're carrying with them. Many of these people are your neighbors. Some may even be your friends. Some may be your school teacher. Yet, many of us don't know these stories. Many of us do not know these experiences. And I want to just once again highlight and thank each and every one of you who have been able to share your experiences today and probably will continue to do so. Just want to thank you for your courage. With that, I want to just outline, we will have a number of speakers today who will be highlighting some of the components of both the resolution, but also some survivors and their descendants who will be speaking. So first off, I would like to invite John Ptak, who is with Kosie Minsky, to speak about the settlement itself, and then we'll follow that by Ms. Ann Cecile Hardy, who will provide remarks, followed by several survivors and their descendants. Thank you. So, John?
Thank you, Minister. I'm one of the lawyers that act for the class in this class action, and it's been a long journey. But first and foremost, I want to thank the survivors who've traveled across the country on short notice to come here today to be part of this historic milestone and to meet with the minister and each other. There are over 30 survivors and their supports who've come from long distances to be here, and it's so meaningful and important that you could do so. Today's announcement is an important milestone in a case which has lasted more than 7 years. As the minister mentioned, the case was commenced in 2018 by the representative plaintiff Ann Hardy, and you'll hear from her directly shortly. And today we're announcing a proposed settlement which will put an end to this lengthy lawsuit. However, as the minister mentioned, class action settlements are not final until they're reviewed and approved by the court, which will determine if it is fair and reasonable and in the best interests of the class as a whole. The settlement that we reached builds on and incorporates lessons learned from past settlements. It's designed to be, first and foremost, trauma-informed and culturally sensitive. While it's designed to pay compensation to survivors, it also incorporates a process for extensive consultation and engagement with Indigenous communities and class members to develop a plan for projects to support healing, reconciliation, protection of languages, and commemoration, amongst many other things. And this plan will be developed by an Indigenous-led engagement team. There'll be many more details about the settlement available in the coming days, but to all the survivors out there who hear this message, if you have questions, please contact us. We're here to help. We're here to listen to your stories and your personal situation and be able to assist you and advise about your rights under this settlement. One of the primary goals of this class action was to shine a light on this dark chapter of Canadian history through hearing the stories of the survivors and being able to share them with Canada and with government. And that was one of the primary purposes of the meeting today with the minister, was to allow those survivors to come from across the country to meet with him and to meet with each other, to be able to share the stories and begin this path to reconciliation. With that, it's my honor to introduce Ann Hardy, the representative plaintiff in this action. She has worked tirelessly with class counsel over 7 years to advance this case on behalf of the class. We are deeply grateful for her bravery in stepping forward to perform this important role. Ms. Hardy and the survivors will not be taking questions at this time, and if there are questions, the minister and my colleague Adam Tennell can answer those after Ms. Hardy has an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. It is a deeply emotional day, but a day of validation. It's a significant day, not just for me, but for all survivors of federal Indian hospitals and their families. It has taken us years of painful reflection, traumatic memories, and deep courage to reach this moment. It is difficult to find the words to express what I know we have achieved. I can say it's a meaningful day. It is an important day. My name is Ann Hardy. I am a Métis. I was born in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories. I was just a child, 10 years old, when I was admitted to the Charles Council Hospital. I was admitted because I had TB and was supposed to be there to heal. But instead, I experienced fear, isolation, and trauma that has stayed with me for decades. I felt alone and isolated throughout my time there. I was repeatedly sexually abused by staff members. I witnessed other patients being sexually abused. As a result, I was terrified of staff. Racist, sexual, and offensive comments were part of my daily experience there. I was in the hospital from January to May of 1969. I left the hospital physically, emotionally, and psychologically battered. The abuse I suffered and witnessed changed the entire course of my life. I know that my story is not unique. I am not alone. Too many of us, and too many Indigenous children and families carry this pain within them. When I chose to be the representative plaintiff in this class action, I did it because I wanted Canada to finally acknowledge what happened to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Now I'd like to invite Councillor Solomon Reece to speak about his late father's experience at the hospitals.
Thank you, Minister. I just want to begin by acknowledging that we are here on the unceded and traditional territories of the Algonquin Nation. I am incredibly grateful to their people for allowing us to be here today. It is a real honor and privilege for me as the son of a survivor, but also as an elected councillor for my community, to be here and hear your stories today, and to also share about the experiences that my father had in these horrible institutions. It's been a long journey to come to where we are today. And as the minister said, residential schools, the 60s scoop, our children in care, these things are well known to Canadians now. But now we're opening up this new chapter in which we are looking at what happened to our people, our children, who were taken from their communities and abused in places that were meant to heal them. And while we can't change this history, we can look forward to the future. Because all of us here share one country, one land, one earth. That's part of our teachings. We also have that expression, all my relations. Because we believed as my father believed. All of us are related to each other. We all come from one place. And when we hear the stories of survivors today, I think about not only what they experienced, but also what these survivors have gone on to do, the contributions they have made to their communities, to their families, and to this country. And we are in a different time. We're in a very different time, both from when these hospitals existed to where we are today. We still have struggles and issues in healthcare, especially in Saskatchewan, where my nation is. We have the worst health outcomes of any population in Canada. We struggle to get access to the care and services that we need. We face many challenges as a country. And I want to thank the Minister, the Prime Minister, and the Cabinet for making this decision. It takes real leadership to acknowledge the wrongs that have been done. It takes real courage to listen. Those were the values that my father had, in spite of what he experienced. He loved his neighbors. He loved the people of this country. When we would talk about our relatives, he would always acknowledge all of our relations from across Turtle Island and those relatives who have come from across the seas, who have come to make this very sacred place their home and our home. So I thank the Minister and the Prime Minister for this important work. It takes a lot of courage, and I celebrate that and wish you and your colleagues well on your journey as you continue to open these chapters. And the most important message I have today is to the survivors. We see you, we feel you, we hear you. I hope that today, myself, the other elected leadership here, that we can hear what you have to share and make those changes. And to you, Minister, we are your treaty partner. We stand ready to work with you. We are committed to this work. And I'm grateful that you and your government are making these efforts to reach out to us to heal these pains, to begin this journey. All my relations, ho.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reece. Now I'd like to invite Eddie Knotts to come and share a few words with us.
Oh, good afternoon. I don't know if I have 5 minutes, but first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Minister, and your cabinets. Especially I want to thank the ones that welcomed us to the territory, this land. It took me 2.5 days to get here. Never ate. My stomach's ready to eat. To listen to the survivors and the ones that are going to tell their story today. 29 years I locked it up. This, what happened to me. Today I opened the door and let that skeleton come out today. It was hard. I believe that story that we're telling today, nobody believed us. And I'm a survivor from TB. That was the first one. That was the biggest one. I lost a lot of friends in that Miller Bay that died from TB. And I didn't know my brother was one of them that made it. It's good. To all of you from different nations, different countries. Can I show you something for a second? This shirt I was not supposed to wear. I'm wearing it because my clothes just got here today. and then I'm going to find a way to get you what I promised you. We were taught protocol. To the government, thank you for hearing us, seeing us. Not only seeing us, but believing us, that the pain is real, what every one of us is facing and feeling. It's real. Today I feel lighter because I finally told my story a little bit. If I was to tell you my whole story, it'll take too long. But I wanted just to express my gratitude to the government. It's not about the money like you said. It's about us telling our story, letting other people. I come here today, I'm a Jimsian, and there's a lot of our Jimsians that have gone to Miller Bay and to these places where we dealt with TB. I am the voice for them. I cannot give them the money, but I'm here to express the pain that they felt. And it's very appropriate. I thought the shirt my daughter, Valine, we were going to go take me to the store and buy me a different shirt. But I want to show you something to all you that went through this I want to show you in the back of my shirt. Some of you saw it. We're still here. They tried to assimilate us, to do away with us, but you know we're still here. We can't blame government. We can't blame our own governments and our own society. But I believe this is a stepping stone for all of us to move on. I love your city, Ottawa. I came to Montreal last night, didn't see it, just saw lights. We got here late last night. And today, I'm hoping to get to see you, Ottawa. I had to leave my hat alone because I'm a Vancouver Canuck fan. I know this is Ottawa Senator territory, and I respect that. That's why I won't wear my hat. I've learned to humble myself. I've learned to submit to a certain extent. Today, I feel good because I finally told a little bit about my story. It wasn't for the government. This was about me telling my story, what happened to me, so that I can be free of all this grief and pain and anguish that I went through. And that's why we are here. Took me a long time to get here. I didn't want to share this story. I wanted to bury it deep in my soul. But today, I let it out because when I saw you as a survivors, I saw the pain. I didn't hear your stories, but I know we all faced anguish and hurt. For me, it's a stepping stone to move on. As my Shamalic language, we say, Waiwa. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you all. We'll now open it up for questions from the media. It will be one question and one follow-up. Please state your name and the name of your outlet. We will start in the room and then turn to those online. For accredited media in the room, please line up at the mic behind me. For those online, please indicate in the chat and use the raise hand function to indicate that you have a question. And again, questions are only to be directed to the Minister and to Council at this time. Nous allons maintenant commencer la période de questions. Veuillez indiquer votre nom et votre média. C'est une question et une suivi. Pour ceux qui sont en ligne, veuillez lever la main si vous avez une question. Nous commencerons par les questions posées dans la salle. Des questions peuvent être posées au ministre et aux avocats à ce moment-là. So we'll open it up to questions. Alessia?
Hi, Alessia Pasifimi here from the Canadian Press. First, thank you to the survivors for letting the media into this moment. For the Minister, I know that this still needs approval from the federal court, but what timeline are we thinking of that compensation will get to survivors?
Maybe I'll just address, there is a scheduled court hearing towards the middle of June, and once the court hearing is complete, then we will work towards establishing an administrator in consultation and work with survivors. The other elements, including the healing, supports for healing, as well as mental health supports, they will also be done in conjunction with the resolution as per the court decision that we're anticipating. I'm going to maybe ask Adam to weigh in.
Sure. In court, lawyers are a little bit like students in school. We give our assignments in, but we don't dictate when we get the marks back. And so that's very much the case with the court. We will make our presentation to the court, laying bare all details of the settlement agreement, but it's for the court to determine how long it needs to review the settlement agreement to ensure that it's fair and reasonable and in the best interest of the class as a whole. One of the important components here is that once the claims process opens, compensation can start to flow immediately. A lot of settlement agreements have to wait until the end of a claims process before compensation can start to flow. That's not the case here. That's something we all worked really hard to ensure, that as soon as the claims process starts to open and claims come forward, claimants can be paid on a rolling basis.
Follow up?
Can you hear me? Okay. Minister, I feel like I've asked you this exact same question about 3 times this week for different settlements, but going to ask you again. If there is an election, is this settlement firm? It can't be changed by a future government coming in.
So this is a binding agreement between the class claimants as well as the federal government. It is subject to court approval. So from a federal government perspective, we have confirmed our acceptance of this and we have signed off on the agreement itself. So what will happen is the judge, he or him, will review the terms, as Adam indicated, will make sure that it is fair to everyone involved in the class, and then make a decision. Subject to anything extraordinary happening in terms of the content of the agreement, I believe that we are very well positioned to conclude this matter. The funding for this is available and is allocated through previous budgetary processes. We have the authorities to enter into this agreement, so there should be no disruption, notwithstanding any electoral events that may happen over the next several weeks or months.
Are there any further questions in the room from accredited media? Okay, and I'm told that there are no questions online, so that concludes today's press conference. La conférence de presse aujourd'hui est terminée. We will invite our guests to head back over to the room next door, where we'll have a buffet-style lunch and continue with our discussions. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.